So Kamala finally did a national solo TV interview.
Greg Gutfeld surprised everyone on live TV when he said he'd rather do anything else than watch MSNBC. Kamala Harris, making her first appearance alone, kept things simple and didn't use any fancy tricks, different from what many famous people usually do. Why did Gutfeld choose to unleash such fierce criticism on air? Tune in as we dissect his scorching words and their impact on the media showdown. Kamala's first solo interview. Kamala recently did her first solo interview on national TV and handled it calmly, without any tricks or special effects. Unlike some celebrities, she didn't try to show off. Before the interview aired, Stephanie Ruhle from MSNBC shared her excitement about being on Bill Maher's show. Greg Gutfeld, who's known for being direct, shared his thoughts on what many people in the US think. He joked that he would rather watch almost anything else than MSNBC, comparing it to choosing between bad TV shows. Kamala dropped a bombshell that stunned everyone. She had discovered a secret that could shake up public opinion about a well-known figure. Gutfeld said supporting Kamala felt like playing slow board games like Sorry or Risk, while Biden's style reminded him of quicker games like Boggle or Trivial Pursuit. He hinted that her recent focus on border issues seemed more about looking good than actually solving the problem. Ruhle, who's a big fan, made it clear she isn't like Trump and that she personally stands by her whenever she deals with the media. Ruhle wore a dark dress for the interview, while Kamala appeared less energetic than expected. The setting seemed almost like it was in a random corner of a hardware store, adding a strange humor to the whole scene. But the real problem was that the interview itself was mostly fluff, lacking any real substance or strong points. Gutfeld didn't shy away from criticizing Kamala's sudden interest in the issue, calling it just another political move. He pointed out that even though she's had years to work on the immigration problem, she hasn't done much. Ruhle, who seemed a bit too supportive, looked more like she was just filling the space, like a decoration in the background. The overuse of the word holistic stood out, as if Kamala had just picked up a new buzzword she wanted to show off. Kamala spoke as if she was new to the job, not someone who's been vice president for a while. She mentioned creating an opportunity economy, but her track record didn't match her words. As the person in charge of the border issues, there were high expectations for her to come up with strong policies, but her actions and plans have been few and far between. The interview also touched on the economy, with some light jokes about how expensive everything has become and how political promises often don't line up with reality. Terms like fair share came up, but were criticized for being too vague, like kids arguing over who got the bigger slice of cake. As big issues like immigration, inflation, and crime continue to worry people, Gutfeld argued that the way politicians handled these topics seems more like avoiding real answers than giving solutions. Ruhle seemed satisfied with the interview, even though there were no clear or direct responses, showing a bigger problem in how some media handles tough topics. The interview wrapped up without really addressing the nation's most important problems, leaving people with more confusion than clarity. Kamala seemed tense and uncomfortable, possibly because of pressure or just the weight of the topics. The overall impression was that her public policies weren't convincing, and the public seemed to pick up on this, as shown by a dip in confidence right after a brief spike. This likely reflects growing worries about both political leadership and how the media presents these issues. As the election nears, Harris readies for a crucial move, a political pressure cooker. As the 2024 election draws closer, Harris and her fellow Democrats are feeling the heat to show they're doing something about the issues people care about. Her recent plan to visit the border isn't because of any new crisis or sudden realization, but rather because of the political pressure. If she doesn't act fast, she could lose the support of frustrated voters. She's heading to the southern border this Friday and is looking forward to her meeting with Justin Trudeau. During a recent speech, Harris talked about her middle-class roots. but her upbringing had some unique experiences, like living in other countries and attending private schools in wealthy areas. Unlike her husband, she didn't grow up with a nanny. "You're welcome, America," he joked, before mentioning new CDC data showing that U.S. obesity rates might finally be dropping. But he quickly added that big cities like New Orleans and Los Angeles weren't part of the data. There was also a strange story about an American woman who died in Switzerland using a new decided to eliminate himself pod. It caused a stir, with people making grim jokes about its availability. But on a lighter note, a recent survey showed that people in Wyoming are incredibly happy, with only Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, and a lonely snow-covered buffalo not sharing that optimism. Harris's sudden interest in immigration comes at a curious time, raising doubts about how genuine she is. Greg Gutfeld reminded people of when she downplayed border concerns, saying they were blown out of proportion and that the border conditions weren't really that bad. Meanwhile, CNN aired a segment on McDonald's, joking that it was more to keep Brian Stelter from eating his co-host's food than to showcase their menu. After spending 4 years dealing with border issues in a top role, it's as if Harris has just realized the border exists and has its problems, like a light bulb going off. But this wasn't the surprising part. Before, she brushed it off as nothing urgent, but now she's suddenly focused on it. Could it be that voter polls are behind this change? It's interesting how the fear of losing power can turn an overlooked issue into a top priority, with new polls showing her opponents gaining support, mainly because of real worries like the economy, inflation, and gas prices. Harris has no choice but to address these problems she once ignored. The changing political landscape has pushed the border problem to the forefront. What seemed like a minor issue before now demands attention. Polls from swing states show Trump leading in ways that weren't expected. Because of this shift, Harris is now supporting fracking, criticizing calls to defund the police, and preparing for her border trip. Looking back, she's even giving more details about her past stance on the border. But is her newfound concern real or just political maneuvering? It's a reminder that in politics, sudden changes aren't always what they seem. Sometimes they're just a way to keep people guessing. The day unfolded with an engaging discussion by Donald Trump on his strategies to boost the economy and his commitment to reinstating jobs in the United States. He outlined his intention to reduce business tax rates from 21% to 15%, with the stipulation that companies must manufacture their products within the American borders. This proposal is part of his broader plan to encourage local production and ultimately stimulate economic growth across the nation. As he elaborated on the potential benefits, the promise of more jobs and revitalized industries painted a hopeful picture for the future. Judge Jeanine shared her thoughts on Trump's recent speech with a strong and intense tone. Her focus shifted to Kamala Harris, criticizing her economic policies with clear frustration. Her energy seemed to aim at stirring a reaction in her audience. In any job, not meeting basic standards means losing your job. There are no second chances, she said firmly. She made it clear she didn't agree with how Harris was handling things, calling it unacceptable. This topic came up when she was invited to talk about her book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, the case against the anti-Trump conspiracy, on The View. Jeanine was excited to join and mentioned she liked Whoopi Goldberg and looked forward to talking on the show. The debate heats up, affecting national plans and policies. Trump's vision versus Harris's hesitations. During her critique, Jeanine compared Harris's lack of focus on helping regular Americans to Trump's policies, which she felt were aimed at improving everyone's lives. Trump's plans included giving tax benefits for companies doing research and development in the U.S. and setting up special economic areas on federal land to boost local manufacturing. The discussion on The View started off smoothly, with Jeanine sharing her thoughts from the book. But as they got deeper into the conversation, tensions began to rise. "We need to find a way to talk, even when we don't see eye to eye," she said. Whoopi agreed and welcomed the idea of honest discussion. But that wasn't the main issue. Janine went on to describe a moment when Trump, during a visit to a store in Pennsylvania, showed kindness to a struggling mother by giving her $100, showing, in her view, that he truly cared about regular people. She used this example to contrast Harris's image as portrayed in her speech. Later, she highlighted security problems at a recent event where the teams in charge didn't communicate well. She used these mistakes as a bigger example of how lack of communication can cause serious issues, much like she felt was happening in the current administration. She also backed Trump's push to bring back jobs, explaining his plan to put a 100% tax on cars made in Mexico. This would push car makers to build their cars in the US instead. She argued that during Trump's time, consumer confidence was high and the economy was doing well, something she didn't see happening now. But it didn't end there. Throughout her speech, Janine argued that Harris didn't have what it takes to fix the nation's economic problems, while Trump, in her view, actively worked to help the people. Her points were more than just criticisms. They were a strong defense of Trump's policies and his impact on the country. The main point was made very clear. Trump has a solid plan to save the economy, while Harris seems unable to come up with any real solutions. They highlighted some of Trump's ideas, like lowering taxes, creating areas for local manufacturing, and putting high tariffs on imported goods. All of this added to the idea that Trump is the only one who can turn things around. At the bottom, the contrast between the top leaders and regular staff was obvious. Before leading the Secret Service, she had closely worked with Jill Biden, and the current temporary head was once a Democratic staffer with ties to big political names during the Obama years. It was clear that politics were deeply mixed into the leadership. Judge Janine accused Harris of not caring about Americans. She argued that if Harris really cared, she'd be tackling the issue of big companies raising prices too much. It's a serious issue, especially when a former president almost got attacked twice. This isn't just a failure, it's a huge embarrassment for our security. The fact that our leaders are less protected than foreign leaders, like the Iranian president, shows there's a bigger problem. This wasn't even the worst part of the day. Following a heated discussion on the rights of victims, she confronted her colleague in the stairwell. Despite having a background in law, the sudden aggression from her peer was startling. She found herself being yelled at, bombarded with harsh language, and finally told to leave the building. This aggressive encounter left her shaken and bewildered, questioning the professionalism of the confrontation. Personal stories and public opinions clash as leaders face scrutiny. Trump's empathy versus Harris's detachment. Judge Janine's final words compared Trump's compassion to Harris's coldness. She pushed Harris to act fast if she truly cares about people, mentioning Trump's regular meetings with everyday Americans. She challenged Harris to show she's serious by taking quick steps to stop companies from squeezing families dry, suggesting that Harris only takes action if it benefits her politically. In the end, Judge Janine painted Harris as completely out of touch with the public, while showing Trump as the one who could save the economy. Her comments made it clear that the stakes are very high in this election and that the country is deeply divided. In a country marked by deep divisions, the television was switched to another channel to view an alternative interview. Surprisingly, there were numerous options available for viewing. Kamala Harris was featured in a rare one-on-one national interview with Sean Hannity. Known for his staunch conservative views, Sean Hannity is a prominent host on Fox News. His shows regularly feature critiques of Democratic politicians, with Stephanie Ruhle of MSNBC being a frequent subject of his disapproval. Despite this, Hannity has publicly stated he has no issue with Ruhle's open support for Kamala Harris. This setting provided a stark contrast of opinions and showcased the diverse media landscape in the nation. He openly supports Donald Trump and doesn't hide it. He's upfront about always rooting for Trump. Unlike many others, Trump and even J.D. Vance are willing to go on media channels that aren't friendly to them. This stands out especially when compared to Kamala Harris, who rarely appears on such platforms. Her interview on MSNBC was her only national appearance, and before that, she had a brief conversation with Tim Walz on CNN. This has raised concerns since she often sends mixed messages. For example, she once praised the economy as Bidenomics, but now she seems to avoid talking about it as reality sets in. During this interview, she struggled to give clear answers, even to simple questions. She also dodged tough topics related to her past positions on controversial ideas. These include getting rid of the filibuster, a huge green project costing trillions, or offering a wide range of free services to undocumented immigrants, which even include gender reassignment surgeries for inmates. Hannity, who is a firm supporter of Donald Trump and frequently criticizes Trump's rivals, uses his show to promote Trump's policies. His career started on local radio before moving to TV, where his strong conservative views are a defining feature. He's loyal to Trump and openly critical of Democratic leaders. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris, even when speaking with a friendly host from MSNBC, struggled to answer directly. The interview raised questions about how she might handle international rivals like Putin or leaders in Iran if she were to become president. But there's more to worry about. Tensions with Iran have been rising, and recently they released disturbing animations showing a plot to harm Donald Trump. This points to a growing threat and a serious escalation in their hostility toward the former president. In the United States, people have the freedom to speak their minds, even on big global stages like the United Nations. There was a time when Donald Trump responded strongly to some of these criticisms, and Sean Hannity points to this as proof of Trump's influence. Hannity is known for his direct way of talking about sensitive topics, often highlighting where he thinks Democratic leaders are falling short. He talks with a sense of urgency, hoping to rally his audience around the issues he sees as critical. According to Hannity, countries like Iran are cautious of Trump, suggesting they wouldn't act the same way around leaders like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, who, in his view, don't show the same boldness to defend Trump and his supporters against these countries. With tensions high, the focus shifts to media impact and upcoming battles. Hannity's dire warnings on foreign threats. Hannity claims these foreign opponents are major sponsors of terrorism and even try to interfere in elections. He even suggests that they pose a real danger to Trump's life. But that's not the worst part. Hannity also criticizes some Democratic figures like Gina Rando, Biden's Commerce Secretary, for using extremely strong language against Trump on shows like MSNBC. He thinks these statements are reckless and should be taken seriously by security services. Hannity believes that the media often misrepresents and publicly attacks Trump unfairly, using harsh and sometimes violent language. He sees this as part of a bigger issue of bias in the media, which he thinks frequently undercuts Trump while ignoring or even promoting aggressive actions from the other side. In his view, the threats Trump faces are minimized by a media that's more interested in painting him as the villain and spreading negative comparisons. For Hannity, it's all about being fair and holding people accountable, especially in the media. He calls out what he sees as double standards. While Trump's critics are allowed to express extreme opinions without consequences, Trump's supporters are treated differently. But it doesn't end there. His goal is not just to inform his audience, but to give them a sense of unity and purpose, particularly when he feels their views and concerns are being ignored or challenged. This sense of urgency to rally his listeners is a big part of Hannity's role. He wants his followers to feel energized, united, and ready to push back against what he calls a radical and extreme left. He often describes these opponents as willing to do anything to gain power. For Hannity, this is more than just politics. It's about defending values and standing against what he sees as a determined effort to silence or attack people who think like him and his audience. And that's why he talks about these issues in a way that makes them feel personal and immediate. The well-known public figure has faced strong criticism for stirring up more division in a country that's already dealing with political tension. People say his approach creates spaces where differing opinions are not just ignored, but completely shut down. Even sharper criticism comes from Kamala herself, who is often accused of underestimating people's intelligence in what should be simple interviews. Laura Ingraham points out that these interviews skip the tough questions, making them feel more like a chat about personal hobbies, like, "Do you enjoy long walks on the beach?" Kamala's interview with the wealthy liberal Oprah Winfrey was also a very soft one, more like a friendly talk than a serious conversation. Things became clearer when Joe Biden chose not to run for president again, and suddenly Kamala's struggles with economic and border issues became harder to ignore. But this wasn't the toughest challenge she faced. Throughout her career, it seems like she's been given the easier path. Even in this campaign, she didn't have to go through the tough face-to-face campaigning in places like Iowa or New Hampshire to win over voters. She hasn't dealt with the media under pressure like Donald Trump has. Instead of explaining her views on important international topics like her strategies with countries like China and Russia, she's been sticking to rehearsed lines and basic patriotic phrases. Her team's messaging hasn't changed much either. They seem to be recycling old campaign lines, which makes people question whether her approach is genuine. She talks about fixing big problems in the country while also trying to sound proud of it, hoping that big financial support from wealthy donors will be enough to outshine Trump's message of unity and economic growth. If she does win, this way of keeping voters in the dark and relying on star power and popular personalities could become a common campaign strategy. This would be a big change from what Democratic campaigns are supposed to be about. Critics like Laura Ingraham see this as an insult to the democratic process itself. But this strategy hasn't always worked. In some interviews, Kamala was asked tough questions about things like lowering living costs, which shows people want real answers, not surface-level conversations. These moments show that the public prefers real, meaningful talks over the scripted sound bites that usually mark Kamala's media appearances. Critics say it's arrogant to expect votes without giving honest answers about policies, making her come off as dismissive and out of touch. If this campaign strategy becomes the norm, what does that say about our expectations for political transparency? Don't forget to like, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more.